So, not to waste any time, I'm sure you're quite familiar with the situation in Slovenia. How familiar are you?
Well, I've been involved in Slovenia for many years. I'm happy to say, and I've been one of those persons from the international scene who has been to Ljubljana many times over the years, even since the early 1990s. Watching as Slovenia's democracy has developed, seeing the important role it's played in assisting independent media developing in other parts of former Yugoslavia. So I've followed it sort of quite closely over the years.
Slovenia is presiding European Union. Do you think there should be the country should play a special role in?
Look, I think Slovenia's democracy has grown very well, and to a great extent, it's there are reasons for the country to be very proud of what it's achieved in the last 15 years. But I do have big concerns about the current government's attitude to media. And over the years, we have been worried about how politicians see media in Slovenia. And we're very concerned at this latest controversy in which the government appears to be arrogant in its ignoring of the genuine concerns that have been expressed by leading journalists in the country about what they perceive to be government interference. And I think that it's very worrying. The problem is a simple one. Some people believe that the government, like previous governments actually, is interfering to try to make sure that the main instruments of Slovenian media, whether it's in broadcasting or in the printed press, that the people who are running these organizations are sympathetic, politically sympathetic to them. And that's just not acceptable. And it seems to us that these allegations that have been made reflect a genuine concern, and the government should be ready to investigate these allegations, and we would support such an investigation. I have to say, though, I'm very disappointed that the government has shown that it's not willing to listen to those who are saying there should be an investigation. It's trying to dismiss the allegations that have been made as lies. It's trying to suggest that the people who have been raising these concerns are nothing more than troublemakers. And I think that's pretty unacceptable. I think for a country that's just historically in this marvelous position of being in the presidency of the European Union, it should be showing tolerance, and it should be showing some democratic approach by saying that it will listen to its critics and it will examine the suggestions that have been made. And I think if it did that, it would really reflect very well on the quality of Slovenian democracy.
Would you say that calls of Slovenian journalists to the EFJ or IFJ are more frequent now? And why do you think that is so?
I mean, I think there have been, we have heard more from our Slovenian colleagues in recent years. It's true. And they have pointed to us to a general anxiety about what they perceive to be as more political interference in media than is acceptable in a democracy. I have to say, it's not just in Slovenia where we hear these complaints. In many countries that are new democracies and recently joined the European Union, there is still a problem where many politicians think that the role of media is basically to, provide them with a good image. And they see nothing wrong with interfering in the way that media work. That's just not acceptable. It's not acceptable in the settled democracies of Europe, although I have to say, there's no doubt at all that Italy under Mr. Berlusconi was a terrible exception to this rule. And unfortunately, I think that there are some politicians in Slovenia who think that Mr. Berlusconi's role was the right role for politicians to play. However, in the mainstream of democracy in Europe, that's not acceptable for politicians to be so involved in the operation of media. So I would say that our Slovenian colleagues have been urging us to raise these issues, and we have done so. I mean, I just think it's a real pity that the government has not taken the opportunity that has been offered to try to have an independent investigation and to really have a period of reflection, so that we don't constantly have this discussion of crisis, but we really examine in a cool way the situation as it really exists.
Mr. White, a lot of people in Slovenia feel like they know you by now. I'm sure that you did practice journalism, or you maybe you still do.
I have been a journalist for all of my life. Before I started with the International Federation of Journalists, I was a journalist for 20 years, working on The Guardian in London and other major newspapers. So I am a journalist by profession. I'm a committed journalist, and these days I'm committed to the defense of journalists.
The cases that you receive as a head of the EFJ, do you have any personal experiences with pressures, media pressures?
Well, as a journalist, I have had experience with media pressures. I have had my, unfortunately, my work challenged by the police and the authorities. I have had difficulties sometimes when I was a reporter in making sure that my work would get published. I have been involved in some reporting activities that have not been easy and subject to official pressure and so on. So I do have experience of this to a certain degree, but I don't have the experience of working and living in a country in which media were controlled and then being faced with the transition to a completely new system. Now, in Slovenia and in many other countries where that transition took place, it seems to me that there wasn't enough time devoted to making sure that the political community understood that within democracy their attitude to media has to be fundamentally different than what it was before. Unfortunately, the admission of the countries into the European Union did not include, in my view, sufficient attention being paid to trying to make sure that there was clear blue water between the exercise of politics and the work of media. And that remains to this day a problem. In many countries there are still politicians who think there is no problem at all about interfering directly in the work of media. So there's a lot of work still to be done there, and I would hope that even now the Slovenian government would be ready to confront this problem that exists, to talk to the journalists in Slovenia, to talk with us and those people who support the development of democracy in Slovenia and always have done, and who wish Slovenia well, but actually who do believe that it's very important to get the balance right about the exercise of politics and the exercise of independent journalism.
I guess that those were suggestions to the Slovenian government. Do you have any suggestions to the media owners?
Well, I think the media owners themselves also, they have a difficult role to play, I know, because they've got their businesses to run. They're also trying to deal with very difficult conditions at the moment, and they also have to deal with politicians and advertisers and so on who have special interests to defend. It's not easy for media owners, but I think the more that media owners work together with journalists to defend the independence of media against unwarranted political interference, the more that they campaign and stand up for the mission of journalism, its independence, then the better things will be in Slovenia. I do think that newspapers like Delo are very, very important and are recognized as important throughout Europe. And it seems to me that they should be protected. They should be able to sort of speak freely without feeling embarrassed that anything they publish is likely to land them into hot water with